Thanks very much. And with respect to your example that you just gave to Senator Plett regarding a 17-year-old suffering from terminal cancer, there is no terminal illness requirement in your government's bill, Minister. So I would just point that out to you to start. But I want to focus on the issue of psychological suffering. And you practiced as a family practitioner for many years. And you would have seen then, in all the time that you practiced, that psychological illness, while very serious, I don't deny that, is treatable, it's not terminal, and there's a more complex decision-making involved. So given that, you indicated in your opening remarks to the House of Commons Committee, and you made very similar, perhaps the same remarks to us today, the proposed legislation also does not permit eligibility solely on the basis of suffering from mental illness. There's no denying that mental illness can cause profound suffering. However, illnesses such as chronic depression, cognitive disorders, and schizophrenia raise particular concerns with respect to informed decision-making. So given that, I'm wondering why you didn't include additional safeguards for people who are suffering with psychological suffering. It is included in your bill. The only place that it is indicated that it's not eligible for assisted suicide on its own is in the preamble, but you don't require a psychiatric assessment. You don't require a more significant wait period, and I understand the Mental Health Commission of Canada suggested a 3-month wait period. Here you have a maximum of 2 weeks, and you would allow two nurse practitioners, not even one doctor, to both provide the approval, assess somebody's competency, and to administer it.
Thank you for the question. It's Mental Health Awareness Week, so a good time for us to be talking about mental illness. You pointed to one of the reasons why it would be challenging, and that's the matter that I raised in my speaking remarks in terms of the capacity to give informed consent is one of the challenges there. But in terms of how we protect people who are suffering from mental illness alone as opposed to a physical illness that is their reason for their request, I think you'll find that the best part of the best way that is protected in this legislation is in the section that defines grievous and irremediable medical conditions and speaks to the fact that natural death has become reasonably foreseeable. And so people that are suffering from schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, etc., natural death is not a reasonable foreseeable outcome, and as you've said, those are not incurable conditions in large part, that there are treatments available for those, and it was the assessment of our team as we drafted this legislation gave instructions for drafting of the legislation that the matter of the reasonable foreseeability of death would exclude people suffering from mental illness alone.
Well, okay, as your colleague indicated a little earlier, everybody's death is reasonably foreseeable to some extent, but I want to just focus then on the particular aspect of somebody who's suffering with a very serious physical illness, yet also has a mental illness. And why didn't you include additional safeguards for those types of people to make sure that they are properly consenting to this? Because as you've acknowledged, there's a more complex decision-making involved for those people. Why is there nothing additional rather than just simply getting all of these approvals and assessment of competency from 2 nurse practitioners?
So that matter is covered in terms of the requirement that a person must give informed consent. And the matter of informed consent is something that healthcare practitioners are quite comfortable with. In fact, every decision that's made in the process of shared decision-making requires that a person has capacity to give consent. And so that we recognize that there will be people who are suffering from medical conditions, and it will be the medical condition for which they would ask for assistance in dying. But if they had, for instance, psychosis and they were out of touch with reality on that basis, they would not be deemed capable of receiving informed consent.